Kaylin, and I'm talking about Godbrand. This story is very fun to write, mostly because everyone in it's a dramatic, vaguely homicidal jerk, which is fun. There is a lot of violence and also pretty gnarly abuse when it comes to Weasel, so quick warning for that. I'm gonna dive in because I don't want this video to be 20 minutes long. Let's get the basic setting stuff out of the way first. It's a modern city, but everyone's furries. Inconsistent furries too. The biggest differences other than that is Heaven, God, and Guardian Angels are all tangible beings that can interact with civilians whenever they want. The second difference is Dublin, a big mental health institution that provides help for everyone of all ages. It's all free because they're big time funded. You can get homes, therapy, doctors, whatever the hell you want. Basically, it's a big city with a very good big service for mental health. You want to know why there's such an emphasis on mental health here? Because about 6 centuries ago, before the angels, God fucked up and added real normal animals to the world. Everyone was horrified, God was horrified. Even more so because he realized he couldn't undo it. Everyone was just stuck staring at smaller, dumber versions of themselves that they were apparently allowed to eat. God tried to soothe the panic by creating angels for everyone, essentially makeshift therapists. Too bad the new angels were also having breakdowns over being made out of thin air and suddenly being alive. God thought, more therapy will fix this, and he offered all his godly resources to the medically knowledged in the city, begging them to build Dublin so he could finally go home and rest. Furries eat the animals now. Before that, they just ate a vague heaven meat that God made that's still widely available. Most of them don't eat their same species since it's uncomfortable and weird. Doing so is considered a vaguely horrifying fucked up power move. Dinosaurs and mythical creatures are obviously isolated from this since their counterparts are either dead or never existed in the first place. They'll often joke they must be like angels themselves in that case, cause the angels lack living counterparts as well. Heaven's a big cloudy void that angels make their own fun in, mostly in the form of little rooms and gossiping. It's rather boring up there. There is a big rose that the angels are all born out of though. It just sits there and they crawl out, emerged as young, naked, mismatched adult creatures. Then there's God, a large lion who'd rather be a mortal fuckboy than deal with responsibility for 5 more minutes. He manages and keeps lists of all the angels by rank except for the newbie ones who are called rookies. The angels are haphazardly assigned random civilians to care for by him. They gain rank by helping their charge's life to completion. Basically looking out for them till they kick it. The reward is God talking to you, social standing, and a little smidgen of power to pretty themselves up with. Which doesn't mean a ton since God doesn't care about it, but the angels and their egos sure do. They normally add in anything from wings to horns to halos, and normally clothes, which is why rookie angels are all simple and naked till they get assigned to someone. They're often taken under wing by a higher ranked angel who can tote their pathetic little friend to God in hopes he'll give them a charge and kick off their rank building. Being naked, looked down upon, and ignored unless you have popular friends leaves most of the rookies rather unagreeable. The level of care given to charges doesn't matter either. The guardian angels are just like an optional extra parent. They can be distant, abusive, wonderfully great, or not there at all. God's still bad at his job. Sometimes the angel doesn't even know they have a charge. Sometimes he gives them multiple ones by accident just to catch up on work when he's hungover. They'll get the same amount of rank anyway when the charge passes. It's like a very slow popularity contest where the person you care for dying young is considered a leg up. Except for the wonderfully great emotional angels who'll probably grieve their charge passing instead of gleefully hitting up the big lion for another one. We start with a pretty basic intro. The black and white has nothing to do with the Godbrand plot, but I wanted to call back to the original video for fun since it was my very first one. There's a rivalry between the two main angels, Callisto and Lupita. Lupita being a much older, experienced angel with 10 prior charges, and Callisto being the snarky rookie they enjoy teasing. Callisto, being a cruel, impatient dick, decided to start killing off other chargeless rookies out of spite. Since God doesn't keep them on lists, Callisto was off scot-free and no one looked for them. He stole their halos in hopes of getting some extra power, but the rookie halos are too weak to really offer anything. Lupita finally prods God into giving him a charge despite his clear attitude problems. They're aware of him getting violent as well, but aren't actually selfless or kind enough to stop him. They know angels can get extremely antsy about ranks, and as long as it doesn't affect them specifically, they're fine letting most stuff like this go. Callisto is given a young bay cat named Weasel and is made to become their legal guardian in the absence of their parents. Lupita hoped literally grounding him with a kid would force him to grow out of his behavior. Back to the full video events. I'm jumping around a bit because the actual video script is a hot mess. Now we're seeing Weasel as a young adult, driving down to the docks to meet a fluffy lad named Pigeonclaws. Them and their friends often hung out around the docks, with Weasel being a confident, if not vaguely mysterious person that knew everyone through Pigeonclaws. The others don't like them all that much. Things go south, they grab Pigeonclaws by the collar and drag them back to their apartment. Callisto seems to have sensed something going wrong, which is right, because something's definitely wrong. Weasel's having a very good time choking their friend out, and Pigeonclaws is absolutely not. The brown background of Callisto's small room fades out into a suburban one. A poorly scripted flashback that definitely needed more work. Anyway, unsurprisingly, Callisto is a violent, detached angel that doesn't need to eat and did a piss-poor job at raising a whole child that needs food and love constantly. He barely figures out the physical care part, and from day one he used Weasel both as an outlet for his anger and a constant flow of praise for his ego. Because of that, they grew up being both overly attached and devoted to him, and extremely self-destructive. Any bad mood would send them into a desperate flurry to both correct the situation and beat out whatever had angered him, even if it was something about themselves. He tolerated them, blamed them for gluing him down to the ground when he wanted to be somewhat on a god level himself. He reverts back to violence out of anger, deciding to target 4 kids in the suburb: a church-going deer, Ivory, a surfer nursing shark named Albion, a fiery pine marten, Orville, and a jackalope-obsessed rabbit, Bruno. He possesses Weasel for the killings after meticulous planning. He doesn't trust them not to fuck it up, and he enjoys killing too much to let someone else do it for him. Weasel's willing to do it anyway because they're desperate to please him, and being stuck in a house alone with him for 15 years didn't do any great favors for their morals. Of course they'd want a chance to be useful to him, to make him proud. And once it's all done, and they're both off clean, Callisto is proud of them. It's probably the happiest he's ever been around them. With the kids killed, Callisto's free to zip back up to heaven and kill their corresponding angels as well. The Halo's giving him a more significant power boost this time. In their older teens, Callisto couldn't stand Weasel at all. He made them into a servant and weapon of God in both their own words, and it was completely infuriating to watch them scramble around trying to recreate it. He started getting colder, out more and away longer, while they got more and more unstable out of fear, until at 18 he left for good and didn't come back. They struggled to adjust to normal life in college, still wrangling with the very loud "punish myself then fix it" rhetoric they were stuck in. They made new relationships but never unhooked the belief that Callisto was all that really mattered. They were terrible and a god loved them. Nothing else could really compare to that. They even worked out till they turned into this little brick wall so they could be a better vessel for him when he came back. Back to current events. Weasel goes out to pop some bottles, swinging by the cemetery as well. I don't know where these locations are in relation to each other, but they look at the graves of the kids they killed with him. They get back to the apartment and talk shit while Pigeonclaws slowly wakes up, rambling on about the Callisto Pigeonclaws kept hearing about and how they were finally going to get him back. After all these years, they're still completely hinged on him. The fact is, Pigeonclaws is Lupita's current charge. Talking about angels is along the lines of sharing dreams here, just an idle topic that they happened to bring up a few days ago. Weasel's willing to kill Pigeonclaws off for this chance. Lupita, a dutiful angel, is watching all this go down. Callisto, being not as dutiful, is only now having his attention caught. He disappeared so long ago with the extra power and pretended to do better. He had status to lose now. All he had to do was wait for the little beast he'd made to die so he could climb the ranks without worry. This is a threat to all he'd built, and he shows up seething, ready to crush them before he realizes what they've done. Lupita had possessed Pigeonclaws, and Callisto hastily does the same to tear after them. Any shred of the fake maturity he'd gained disappears with the prospect of mauling Lupita to his heart's content, finally getting one up on the person who'd looked down on him for so long. It may be Callisto's expression here, but him and Weasel are feeling the same thing. Weasel's overly attached from abuse and a deep need to have the only person who'll love them back in their life. Callisto's overly attached to the idea of Lupita because he's spiteful and wants to dominate them to prove he's better. They get back to the docks where this all started, and Pigeonclaws/Lupita tackles them off into the water. Callisto and Weasel's body easily dominates the other two, and Pigeonclaws is choked out for the second time in the video. Both angels have to unpossess their charges after two of Pigeonclay's friends, Harrison and Silver, suddenly dive in to rescue them. The next part's probably the bit I liked most animation-wise. Lupin is absolutely furious, Callisto's a smug freak, next is the victims killed first time around. Ivory's DIY crucified, Albion's drowned, Orville's set on fire, and Bruno's impaled. Harrison calls the cops on Weasel and they're arrested. Lupita finally airs out everyone's dirty murder laundry in court since killing kids matters to their reputation now, as well as mattering to Pigeonclay's safety. Weasel's all but admitting to things, morals still not working great, and their fake sense of morality not mattering when they have Callisto back with them. Callisto, stuck in the equivalent of angel chains that stop him teleporting anywhere, is completely livid. He goes back to his tried and true method of verbally abusing Weasel before admitting to everything himself in full detail. He's already caught, Lupita's scolding him, Weasel's shaky now, but running their mouth earlier had made things impossible to recover from. He killed those kids, and as Weasel's legal guardian, he wasn't even close to being fit. Angel crimes are hard to judge in civilian courts, because God just kinda lets them happen. Most of the time they're just separated from the victimized charge, and things are swept over. Callisto takes the full punishment here, and Weasel's institutionalized with some difficulty, while Lupita goes out to chat with God. Callisto's just kinda held in a normal cell in chains till that all works out to make the court feel like they're punishing someone. Since Callisto was also their legal guardian, he has to remain in prison for longer. Not that it means much for an angel, but this is a little more than something God has to deal with at this point. The rest of the story involves Weasel being very difficult in therapy and slowly, painfully slowly, trying to untangle everything Callisto did to them, and everything they did after that. All their self-assuredness is gone, leaving them just as a detached arsehole that doesn't really understand people at all, though they do slowly make a couple of other strange acquaintances. At one point they lock Callisto in a life-or-death ritual to remove him as their guardian, only because God punished Callisto by making him deal with Weasel for the rest of their life, and they're too scared of him to live with that now. In the very distant future they apologize to Pigeonclay. All kinds of hijinks ensue. They just end up more scared of Callisto than not. And that's godbrand. I imagine it'd be subject to change. I've already tweaked a lot of story beats since the first board of this. Again, it's a lot of fun to write. I like over-the-top dramatic characters. I don't know how long this video is. Hopefully it was short. I'm kind of rushing this script. I hope it's okay. Feel free to ask questions. I'm more lenient giving out story beats on this one. Well, considering I laid out all of it right here. Feel free to ask questions. Thanks for listening. I'm going. Bye. Leaving them as just a detached asshole that doesn't really